My dear viewers, it is 6 p.m. here in Cairo. Time for the news. My name is Amal Mukhtar. We start our news with the headlines. President Sisi holds a phone talk with the Dutch Prime Minister on bilateral ties, regional developments. The executive manager of the National Election Authority, Councillor Ahmed Bendari, said that voting in the Senate elections abroad. Welcome back to the news in detail. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi on Friday stressed the importance of respecting international laws and accords, which obliges countries to secure the diplomatic missions of other countries. The president made the assertion in a phone call he received from Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof, hailing the promoted level of bilateral ties and cooperation in different fields. The phone call touched on enhanced cooperation in the migration file, with the Dutch official lauding Egypt's efforts in this regard, in addition to its contribution to combating terrorism and extremism. The head of state also reviewed Egypt's intensified efforts for hammering out a ceasefire deal in Gaza, ensuring the access of sufficient amounts of humanitarian aid to its people. He also pressed for the two-state solution being the only means to restore regional peace. The executive manager of the National Election Authority, Councillor Ahmed Bendari, said on Friday that voting abroad in the first day of Senate elections 2025 is going smoothly and regularly. Addressing a midday press conference on updates of the process, Bendari hailed efforts by Egyptian missions across the globe to facilitate the vote. The conference was joined by several Egyptian ambassadors and consuls in different countries via video conference. The participating ambassadors said polling stations located in Egypt's diplomatic missions in respective countries opened at 9 a.m. according to the local time of each country, adding that voting is proceeding in a stable way of technical and security aspects. Councillor Bendari said Egyptian voters in several Arab countries flocked to the polling stations in large numbers to choose members of the Senate. The National Election Authority's executive manager earlier said that voting already started in 90 polling stations in 76 countries, while it is set to start later on at 46 polling stations in 41 countries, taking into consideration the time differences in each country. Egyptian abroad continued casting their ballots in Senate elections 2025 at Egyptian embassies and consulates worldwide on Friday. The two-day process abroad began at 9 a.m. local time in many countries, including New Zealand, Australia, Japan, South Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, China. Also, the vote is also underway in Arab countries, including United Arab Emirates, Oman, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, Iraq, and Russia. The polling stations will close at 9 p.m. according to local time in different countries. First, Migration and Expatriate Affairs, Badr Abdelati met with Senator Jeff Merkley, a member of the U.S. Senate's Foreign Relations Committee. The top diplomat stresses Egypt's consultant support to the two-state solution in the Middle East and for the establishment of an independent Palestinian state along with the 4th of July 1967 lines, with East Jerusalem as its capital. Abdelati reiterated the full rejection of any relocation of Palestinians out of their lands, pointing out to Egyptian pivotal role in maintaining security and stability of the Middle East and Africa. Minister of Foreign Affairs, Migration and Expatriate Affairs, Badr Abdelati, also met with Chris Van Hollen, a member of both the U.S. Senate's Foreign Relations Committee and also Appropriations Committee. The meeting touched on the catastrophic developments in Gaza, which the top diplomat reviewing Egypt's mediation efforts along with the U.S. and Qatar for reaching a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip and ensuring humanitarian aid flow into the enclave, as well as facilitating a transition into early recovery and reconstruction efforts in the Strip. Abdelati reiterated Egypt's commitment to the two-state solution. In an interview with the editors of Washington Post, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Migration, and Expatriate Affairs Badr Abdulati asserted that Egypt remains an active body in the efforts aiming to restore peace and security in the region. Egypt's top diplomat also asserted the importance of continuous development of the bilateral Egyptian-U.S. partnership in different political, economic, and security domains in order to serve the two countries' mutual interests and support development and stability in the Middle East. Gaza Civil Defense Agency said 11 people were killed by Israeli gunfire and air strikes on Friday, including 2 who were waiting near an aid distribution site inside the Palestinian territory. U.S. President Donald Trump's special envoy inspected a U.S.-backed food distribution center in war-torn Gaza on Friday as the UN Rights Office reported that Israeli forces have killed hundreds of hungry Palestinians waiting for aid. The visit by Steve Witkoff came as a report from global advocacy group Human Rights Watch also accused the Israeli occupation forces of presiding over regular blood baths close to U.S.-backed aid points. The U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, said that the Witkoff had visited Gaza to learn the truth about the private aid sites run by Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is supported by the United States. The UN's Rights Office said Friday that Israeli forces have killed hundreds of hungry Palestinians waiting for aid outside U.S.-backed food distribution points. The UN's Rights Office in the Palestinian territories said at least 1,373 people have been killed seeking aid in Gaza since 27th of May, 105 of them in the past 2 days. The UN office said that most of these killings were committed by the Israeli occupation forces, breaking down the death toll into 859 killed near the U.S.-backed food sites and 514 along routes used by UN and aid agency convoys. France on Friday started to airdrop 40 tons of humanitarian aid to Gaza as it urged Israel to allow full access to the area, which it said was slipping into famine. President Emmanuel Macron said as they were faced with absolute urgency, France have just conducted food airdrop operation in Gaza with the Jordanian, Emirati and German partners. He added that airdrops are not enough and Israel must open full humanitarian access to address the risk of famine. Slovenia imposed an embargo on exports, imports and transit of arms to Israel 2 weeks after it declared Israeli ministers persona non grata. The measure was announced by Prime Minister Robert Golob after a government session where Golob said that Slovenia was the first European country to make such a move. Slovenia have recognized a Palestinian state in June last year and has since that time repeatedly called for a ceasefire in Gaza and increased aid deliveries in the enclave. A series of Israeli airstrikes killed 4 people in South and East Lebanon. The Health Ministry said Friday that a series of strikes have launched by the Israeli enemy Thursday evening led to the death of 4 people. The Israeli occupation forces have claimed it had targeted Hezbollah infrastructure in South Lebanon and the eastern Bekaa Valley. Israel have nonetheless kept up near daily airstrikes in Lebanon despite the ceasefire and has threatened to continue them until the group have been disarmed. Under the terms of truce, Hezbollah was to withdraw its fighters north of the Thani River, and Israel was meant to withdraw all its troops from Lebanon. Syrian Foreign Minister Asad al-Shaybani said his country wants Russia by our side and called for mutual respect between the two nations. Speaking to his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov during a visit to Moscow, al-Shaybani said that the current period is full of various challenges and threats, but it is also an opportunity to build a united and strong Syria. He added that Syria is interested in having Russia by its side on this path. Lavrov said Russia was ready to provide the Syrian people with all possible assistance in post-conflict reconstruction. Iran on Friday rejected accusations by the U.S. and more than a dozen of its allies that Tehran had attempted to kill or kidnap journalists and officials in Western countries. In a statement, Iranian Foreign Minister spokesman Ismail Raqqai have described the claims as baseless, calling them an attempt to divert public attention from the most pressing issue of the day, the genocide is occupied Palestine. Western governments, including the United States, Britain, France, and Germany, condemned in a joint statement on Thursday the growing number of state threats from Iranian intelligence services in our respective territory. Well, with this, we come to the end of the news bulletin. My name is Alan Mukhtar. Thank you for watching.